Starstruck.
Good old Rainier.
I know.
Love that. The brewery the big Rainier sign that sits there right on I-5 as you're coming in to see.
Isn't it like apartments or something, though?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, they still got the big sign
Yeah.
there, though. Yeah.
Well, welcome back to a new episode of Joyride. I am Jared Brandon Flandy, and
I am Adam Mendenhall.
this is the show where we talk about all things vehicles and adventure. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Oh, not too bad. Did you get through the ocean?
Yeah, just about had to plant an outboard motor on the backside of my pickup truck to get here. I tell you what, it's that classic Oregon rain season where it's just not stopping lately.
I had a guy ask me one time, does it really rain there as much as it, a guy from out of state went, yes.
Yes, it does. That's why it looks like the Shire when the sun comes out, because we have so much water that all it takes is a little sunshine, and man, it just grows green like you've never seen.
That is the upside. So before we get into our casual chat today, I just want to make a couple of announcements. If you've not been on our Instagram or anything like that, we do have Patreon. We do appreciate your support in any way. We do have some bonus content there for certain tiers. So if you actually want to get a little more visual experience of this podcast, you can go do that. Also, by all means, check out www.starstruckcompany.com. That's our parent company's website. Our show's on there, and there's other goodies and products that we offer as well. So by all means, do check that out. Also, we'd like to give another little shout out, as usual, to Noah Norwood of the Hot Rod Kid podcast. Noah is a professional automotive restorer, usually working on classic Fords and Mustangs of that kind of variety. And that, once again, is the Hot Rod Kid podcast, available on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, so we're gonna be making a journey right now, but still to a galaxy
Far, far away.
far, far away. In this episode, we'll be discussing the vehicles of Star Wars. So, first off, when you think of a Star Wars vehicle, what's the first thing you think of?
I think I'm like most people, the Millennium Falcon just pops in my head first and foremost above all. And that not just goes for Star Wars. I think that goes for a lot of science fiction vehicles.
What I read once is when they were making the original one back in 77, I think it was actually 76 when they were, of course, filming it. George Lucas went out for lunch, and I think he got a hamburger. And so he was trying to figure out what the spaceship would look like. So he bites into the hamburger as he's thinking, and and as he's chewing, he looks down. He sees that bite missing in the middle. And then it was like an olive or something like that was like popped out to one side.
Oh,
so
my
that's
gosh.
the shape of the Falcon was based off of a hamburger he was
Oh,
eating.
isn't that interesting? The initial creative thought process that pops in from the bite out of a hamburger. Yeah.
Was the other thing? Han Solo, of course, was always bragging. I made the Kessel Run. Was it 12?
Less than 12 parsecs.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was like,
Yep.
I always was curious. Is like, what does that mean? Or like, what's the story there? And they finally did tell that story many decades later in the form of Solo.
Yes, in the Solo movie,
Yeah.
they did provide representation of that and what it looked like, and again the journey they had to go through to get there. That was interesting. It was I really enjoyed that movie. I think
too.
a lot of people pretty critical about the movie, but I thought it was a great backstory. I thought the actor did a good job, and it was just really neat to see the Millennium Falcon before it was trashed out by Han Solo, which we get to see that process escalate throughout the movie as he's behind the controls along with Chewbacca. What happens from when it was originally owned by Lando Calrissian, and then what Han Solo ends up putting it through, he puts it through its motions.
I liked the Force Awakens too. Was it what was the gal's name? Was it what?
Oh, Rey.
Ray,
Yeah,
Ray,
yes,
Ray
yep.
and Finn. They're running. They're on Tatooine, running from the pursuers, and he goes, "What about that ship?" And she goes, "Nothing's a pile of junk. You don't see it yet, right?" And the other ship blows up. Okay, we'll take the pile of junk. The camera pans up. It's the Falcon.
That's right. Yeah, that was another good one, and that was some great. Again, they've always put that ship in some just cinematic positions where it's just in motion flights and really engaging, where you're behind and you feel like you're chasing it, or you're in the cockpit of the ship. And that film, I thought, did a really good job with that, especially on the planetary level, where they're flying through that old crashed Star Destroyer that's on the surface and battling the TIE fighters that were in pursuit.
Yeah, what was the other thing I was thinking here? Oh, when they were, once again, back to the original, another thing I read is that scene towards the end where it's all the X-Wings before they're getting ready to take off and blow up the Death Star. That hangar, it was actually a studio set. It wasn't nearly as big as it looked. They actually intentionally shut the lights off in certain places.
Oh, to provide the depth.
To give the illusion that it's much bigger and deeper. Yeah. So it was a really, really cheap trick, but it worked.
Well, it's so many of those, you look at the original trilogy, especially the one from 77, and how many, just model, just people that were doing modeling, and just some of the prop making and stuff of that. I mean, it's just it's incredible what they had to go through to just make the miniatures is what I was looking for. And just how much detailed work goes into that, just creating those miniature models and then placing them in different scenes, and just, again, giving the illusion of, this is the full-size vehicle, but it's not.
No. The only critique, I mean, the special effects, of course, in Star Wars was legendary. That really kind of started a revolution in that regard. But with the X-Wings and the TIE fighters, I think they basically put them on a stick.
Yeah.
And they move them in front of a blue screen.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's the only thing you can kind of tell. It looks like it's flying on a stick a little bit, but that's about it.
It is, and it's interesting to listen to people like Adam Savage from Mythbusters, who has obviously his own independent channel now. He talks a lot about his time when he worked for ILM and working on the Phantom Menace back in 1999. He was still doing miniatures and working on models back then, and just how much goes into that. I mean, it's incredible. And some of the people he worked with that have been in the industry at that point in time in late 90s have been around 30, 40 years, and just what a master craft that is creating some of those models, and just all the instrumentation, all the electrical stuff that goes into that, and what it takes to restore a lot of those today, as some of those old models have been brought into museums or private collections where people are trying to restore them, and a lot of those people aren't around, and not everyone can afford to call Adam Savage up and give a consultation on what to do.
And not to get too off our Star Wars topic, but I remember when that show ran, and it was like, you were a loser if you didn't watch Mythbusters. Yeah. That's how popular it was. Some younger people might not realize that, but I always thought, growing up, that these guys were all like engineers and things like that. I only recently learned that like almost all of them have like degrees in film and stuff like that.
Yeah,
they just kind of end up going on the special effects side over time.
Yes, yeah, they did. Yep.
So back to Star Wars here. I'll see if we can solve a debate here. Okay, so in Empire Strikes Back, when they're on Hoth, I believe, and you have the big walking thingamawigs.
I think I know where you're going. Yeah.
No one's been able. Everyone has a different opinion on this. They're either called AT-ATs or AT-ATs. Yeah,
that's a tough one. Personally, and I grew up watching the original trilogy, and that's arguably my favorite film is The Empire Strikes Back. I always called them AT-ATs, but
I prefer that too. AT-AT just sounds stupid.
But back when I was a kid, that phrase got coined, I would say, equally as did the AT-AT. So, I just think it's more technical and proper to say AT-AT.
If George Lucas wants to tell me it's AT-AT, I will say it's AT-AT.
Exactly. Yeah.
But for the moment, I might just say AT-AT.
That's right.
And one of my other favorite things on that was there was the Nintendo 64 game of Empire Strikes Back. Do you ever remember playing that?
Yes, actually that. And I remember playing prior to that the Super Nintendo, Super Star Wars, and Super Empire Strikes Back, and Super Return of the Jedi. And there was the portion of the game where you had to battle and you were on Hoth and trying to destroy the AT-ATs.
Yeah. The other thing, like you were talking about all that prop making, I've seen the pictures. I mean, none of that was computer generated back then. Those were actual physical props and models and devices.
It was, and I think it brought today obviously a lot of it is dated to a point, you can tell. It's like, but it just brought a different experience and realism to the film, some genuine quality. I think when you have that physical item in your hand, especially when you look around where you had the models off in one scene, and then the other scene you had full sets of people and physical items there that were constructed just for that scene. It brings a different level to the movie, and it seems like that's kind of catching on. People are realizing the value of that again and trying to get back to some of those old roots.
They are. And, as you know, I work in the movie business, and the return to, I mean, there's been a big resurgence in practical effects, practical being actual, like, physical things, not done with computers. I mean, Christopher Nolan is famous for almost wanting just to use practical effects anymore. And I think it was, I don't remember who it was. He was a special effects artist that worked with Ridley Scott. And Ridley Scott asked him, I think it was for Legend. You know that one with Tom Cruise?
Yes, from 1985.
And there was a little flying firefly thing,
yep.
right? And I think that's when Tron had just been out a few years earlier, so the computer animation was starting to get there. And Ridley Scott asked him, "Well, should we do it computer animated or should we do it practically?" and the guy's advice to him was, "If you can do it practically because it looks real because it's real." And I'm not totally downplaying digital effects. I mean, like some of those backgrounds they do, like let's say you want to recreate 1923 Cairo. I mean, it's getting so good, I'm having trouble telling that it's fake anymore.
Yeah, that is incredible with how things are trending to the point where it's like at some point the computer the digitization of stuff where it's basically as real as where we are now, like the Matrix.
Yeah, pretty much. So we talked about the AT-ATs, Imperial cruisers. I mean,
yeah, another fascinating vehicle. Some of the largest in the Star Wars universe, right? I mean, you'd have your standard Star Destroyer there, the Devastator. At the beginning of Star Wars: A New Hope, that's one of the first vehicles we see with the Italian, or not Italian, but the rebel cruiser that's trying to escape to Tatooine. So we see this huge Star Destroyer come on screen, and just the awe of going, my God, look at the scale of this vehicle. It really makes an impact on you.
The Italian what?
I know. sorry. Yeah, it's automotive leaking over into Star Wars. Yes.
This is like it's not Spaceballs, but this is flying Lamborghini. And this guy, boopy. Sorry, that's just what I had in my head when he said that.
It's too easy to go that way, I guess, in your mind. But yeah, just that gave us a real impact of like some of the scale of some of these vehicles. Going, wow, here is this Rebel blockade cruiser, and then you see how small it is in comparison to this Star Destroyer. And then from there, that was the first film. We see arguably the largest, one of the largest out of the entire Star Wars universe, the Death Star, right? And it makes that Star Destroyer just look like a little ant in comparison. I mean, it's a moon or planet-size, space station. The first film really had an impact on the scale of vehicles from just small, speeder, basically the equivalent to a side-by-side motorcycle in our world, but in the Star Wars universe, you have that, and then all the way up to a planet-sized space station. Yeah. It's just incredible.
I know those cruisers, though, people I think that have not enough time on their hands, will actually make size estimates of what they are.
Oh, yes.
And some of them, if they were real, some of them would be the size of Manhattan, essentially.
Yeah, in fact, there is a few good YouTube videos on there where it's just a visual, and they line up a lot of the Star Wars vehicles in comparison to our aircraft carriers, and then even other ships from other genres like Star Trek. So you have the Enterprise, and you have all these fictional vehicles. So it is kind of cool to see what would that look like next to the Eiffel Tower or the Statue of Liberty or the Chrysler Building. How big is that?
And you mentioned the speeders. The speeder, what do they call that thing? It was kind of like the sports car, but not when he was on Tatooine in the original one. It was red. Remember what that was called?
Oh, the red one. I don't.
It was something like speeder, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
So,
yep.
Well, sorry, we're not, well, apparently not as big as Star Wars nerds as we thought we were.
I'm sure there's some listeners that are like, "Damn, they know what it is right off the cuff."
I have read though that apparently they used mirrors on the sides of it, and that just reflected the sand back, so it looked like it was hovering.
Actually, yeah, that pocket area was hovering on. That's right. Yeah.
Once again, simple but effective.
Simple but effective back then. Yeah. Camera angles.
It did that too. And of course, you have the TIE fighters, and the Rebel ones are the X-wings, correct?
Yeah, the most predominant ones are the X-wings. They also had the Y-wing and then the A-wing. Were the common ones, and they were like the older models. The X-wing was typically the most current day ship or highest tech fighter that they had at the time. And the TIE fighters had a plethora, depending on what film you want to reference. And for all intents and purposes, we're kind of talking about the original trilogy. You had your standard TIE fighter. Then you had your TIE Advanced, which, if you remember from the first film, that was the ship that Vader was flying. It had the wings, basically the fins on the side there, angled in, and it had its own hyperdrive, which allowed it to travel at light speed if needed. And then in later films, like Return of the Jedi, we saw the TIE Interceptor, which was again smaller, more advanced fighter. And so, yeah, it seems like the Imperials had quite the edge, not just in the tech, but the sheer numbers versus the Rebels in those films.
And then that kind of reminds me, I'm assuming, of course, you've seen all of them, including the prequels, right? Is it just me, or did you think, because, the prequels are supposed to be in the past, right? Is it just me, or did the past seem like they had more advanced spaceships?
Some of the ones from the prequels, yes, especially when you get into like Revenge of the Sith, we see some stuff going, well, that's pretty cool. It's like, why didn't that survive? I mean, did we go backwards here? As they moved on, I agree. Yeah, some of that stuff, and maybe some of it was because those prequels, as everyone knows, they were made after the fact, right? So later years. So just because of the technology and the special effects that are available, I think is part of it, where a lot of them did look like, hey, that looks a lot.
I think that's a lot down to it. They could just do more stuff, and so it just kind of gives the illusion of that to a certain degree. But when I was a kid, I always liked the TIE fighters for some reason. And then as I got, a little kid, but then as I got, older and realized this is the bad guys, it's like, I can't like it anymore now.
Yeah, a lot of those it's hard to root for the evil side. Yeah, the dark side there. When you're watching the films, you want to gravitate towards the light naturally, for most.
Yeah. And, a lot of people like you generally say, what's your favorite Star Wars movie if you had to pick one? And, most people like you say Empire Strikes Back. Can you elaborate a little bit for me on that?
Sure. I think for me, along with a lot of people, it comes down to, and it's a tough choice. I mean, for me, it's like Return of the Jedi is real close right there. But the amount of events that take place in The Empire Strikes Back, just for me, trump basically all the other Star Wars films. It's so dramatic with you see the character evolution of Luke Skywalker from where he is at the beginning of the film. Then he meets Yoda, goes through his Jedi training, and then battles Darth Vader. And then again, I can only imagine what it was like for people that were alive in 1980 that saw that, went to the film, and then the epic scene, arguably one of the most epic in movie history, of where Darth Vader says, "Luke, I am your father." That's just like, oh my God. It's just absolutely just earth-shattering, right? And so to me, it was that, and just you get to see all these different scenes in that film. I mean, where you start on an ice planet, then you go to a swamp planet, then you end up at Cloud City, and just that. And there were so many interesting characters. Back when the film was originally released, Boba Fett wasn't called Boba Fett; he was Bounty Hunter. It's like, who is this character? And then Han Solo getting frozen in carbonite, and just to me, it was the most eventful film, and that's the main reason.
Okay. Now, my personal favorite is not as I say 1, 2. It's a 4. It's not 4 or 5. It's Return of the Jedi.
Oh, okay.
And my reasoning for that is, when that movie's over, you just feel satisfied, which is a rare feeling. There is movies out there when it's done, you just went, it was good, but I just don't feel like there was enough closure or anything like that, And to me, Return of the Jedi just always felt like this is the way it was supposed to be. They did such a good job with it. I also think it was the best directed one too. To be honest with you, I mean, does it have some is like the shock and awe of the the father reveal? No, but I just thought the acting was a little more rounded. The dialogue was a little more snappier, that kind of thing. But maybe that's just because they already made two, and so they kind of worked the kinks out, so to speak.
Sure. I can see that. Again, it's a tough one for me, like a lot of people, because I agree with you on all those points. And Return of the Jedi was an amazing film, and there's also a lot of reveals there, right? As equally shocking and just entertaining was the fact that you finally get to see Vader, unmasked from the front. I mean, we got a glimpse in in Empire Strikes Back where he's in his meditation chamber, and we see the helmet go back on from the backside, but we don't get to see a face, and we get to see that, and that final speech between father and son before he passes away. So it really was a completionist film. I think you phrased it very well. You feel very satisfied after watching it.
There was an alternate ending for Return of the Jedi too.
Oh, really? Well, which alternate ending was that?
Well, as Luke is helping Vader take his mask off, and Vader dies, right? And what was originally going to happen is then Luke puts the mask on and goes, "Now I am Vader."
Wow.
So he switches to the dark side, but they ended up not going in that direction, thankfully.
That's actually one surprisingly I hadn't heard. I've seen a lot of different behind the scenes and alternate things involving that film. My favorite, of course, is the title originally was going to be Revenge of the Jedi, and they felt that was just too dark. They wanted it was too un-Jedi-like. They wanted it to be more, leveled out or good, and so that's why they changed it to Return. But I love to see the promotional stuff that was produced during that time that had Revenge of the Jedi.
Yeah,
It's highly collectible.
Yeah, those posters are worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
But it eventually did become Revenge of the Sith.
That's right. So they kind of saved it appropriately for that.
Yeah, this might be not a very popular opinion of some people, but I like the prequels. I never thought they were bad. I always enjoyed them.
I did as well, especially the second and third film. The first film, I think, with a lot of people, my biggest issue with that film was the, of course, controversial Jar Jar Binks character and how much screen time he had. But the Duel of Fates at the end with Darth Maul, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Obi-Wan, that was, again, one of the most incredible lightsaber battles till this day, and that really sealed the movie for me in the end.
I mean, my personal favorite is still the original trilogy, but it's just hard to top that, I don't think they really I don't think the prequels are bad. It's just like, it's hard to compare it to,
It really is, and, I'm not going to go off subject, but I think for me is Sir Alec Guinness will always be the absolute pinnacle or most iconic Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's the original, right? But at the same time, he was such a prestigious actor. Ewan McGregor was fantastic.
Oh, yeah,
I don't think
absolutely.
you could have selected a better person to follow up to Alec Guinness, especially playing a younger Obi-Wan. And he's played an older one now, of course, in the most recent series that got released on Disney Plus. But yeah, I think for me, it's just some of the actors they had back then were just top tier.
I was at a film conference in Seattle once, and I had the privilege of being able to meet Pablo Hidalgo. And he's like one of the big lore experts at Lucasfilm, and so this is what he was telling me. He was like, when they were making the sequel trilogy, I mean, he'd be getting like texts from J.J. Abrams, like at odd hours, asking like, would they have a communicator by this point in time, and then Pablo go look at yay or nay, So when you need to know all the intricacies of the Star Wars world, him and a team of other people, that's where you go to, the lore squad, essentially.
Well, you couldn't ask for a better guide through that universe, right? To make sure you're staying appropriate to the time.
Yeah. Another thing I like about Return of the Jedi too, of course, is Endor. Okay.
Yes.
The forest planet, which I believe was shot in the redwoods in Northern California.
Yes, I believe it was as well.
And they're on those speeder bike things there too.
Mm-hmm.
And how they got a lot of those shots was they used what is called a Steadicam. And a Steadicam was relatively new at that time. I think it was invented in the mid-'70s. It was used for Rocky, like when he was running up the steps. And what it is, it's a harness that goes on someone, and it's got these mechanics that basically make the camera steady as the operator's running or walking with it. Does that make sense?
That does, yeah.
And so for A Return of the Jedi, they took a Steadicam, I believe, and they just had the guy walk through the redwoods. Not run, just walk at a normal pace. And then they changed the frame rate so to make it appear really fast.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's how you keep the consistency going, but then you just sped up the frame rate.
Yeah, once again, simple but effective.
Simple but effective. Practical effects back in the day.
Did you ever see the Family Guy spoofs of those?
Yes, I do own all of those. They're fantastic. I especially, I think my favorite scene is the one from A New Hope. It's the New Hope spoof, and they're at the end of the Obi-Wan Vader battle, and they're trying to get on the Millennium Falcon, and they're taking a couch from the trash compactor, and Brian and Peter are trying to move it one direction. He's like, "No, go to your left, go to your right," and then they just take off with the landing platform still down.
I bring it up because when they were spoofing Return of the Jedi, it wasn't the speeder bikes; it was the Pee Wee Herman bike. You remember that scene?
Yes.
And Pee Wee Herman just runs out from a tree. My bike
oh my God!
It's just like so random. You know?
Those were brilliant. What was the Empire Strikes Back title was something Dark Side, and then it was Return of the Jedi was It's a Trap.
Yeah. Well, Blue Harvest. The reason why they called it one of those is I want to say it was one of the sequels. I want to say if it was not,
it was actually the A New Hope spoof was Blue Harvest.
Yeah, Blue Harvest. But that was actually a working title for I think The Empire Strikes Back.
Ah, okay.
Because when they made the first Star Wars, no one had ever heard of it, obviously, and so when they had, because aside from filming costs, like one of the most expensive things on a film is to set everyone up, especially if you're shooting on location, hotel rooms, catering, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So when they started to announce that they were going to film new Star Wars, everyone knew what a massive hit it was. So all these different suppliers and hotels and catering companies started charging astronomically more because it's Star Wars. They got the people. They have the money, and so they started calling it Blue Harvest, and they said it was a horror movie, and then no one cared. And then they got the regular rates and everything again.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's interesting, though. That's a neat point.
Well, we're kind of coming to a close here, Adam. Do you have any other thoughts on Star Wars vehicles or spaceships or anything of that variety here?
I think just in general, I think encourage people that haven't, that people that at least that have grown up with only the new stuff is if you haven't already, look back at some of the old films and see some of those old models and practical effects and just, give you an idea of the appreciation and comparison to all the stuff today that is, for the most part, just computer generated, right? Mm-hmm. So, definitely take a look at some of those old films if you haven't.
And if you could have any vehicle, what would it be from the Star Wars universe?
Ooh, any vehicle from Star Wars? I think it would have to be Darth Vader's Super Star Destroyer, the Executor. It was the largest Star Destroyer in that universe. I'd have that.
Is that going to fit your garage, though?
No, it's not.
I'd take one of those Imperial walkers. No, the ones indoor, the two-legged ones. Something about that just seems satisfying as well. You could just go.
That would be pretty cool from a planetary.
Step on a car if somebody you don't like. All right. With that said, we want to thank everyone for listening, and by all means, check out some of our websites we have. Plus, everything we got is in our description boxes in the links to this episode. So just by all means, check that out if you want to check out some other stuff or peripheral experiences of this podcast. So as that said, I think we're going to wrap up this casual chat, and we'll catch you next time. How's that sound, Adam?
Sounds great. Till next time.
All right. Signing out.